Hello and welcome to your one-stop for vehicle repair, restoration, and everything automotive. This is Bird's Garage. Okay, so today in Bird's Garage, we got our 01 Bullitt Mustang project car back in the shop, and I want to get to something I've been trying to get to for a very long time, but just never got around to it. I'm sure a lot of you people with projects like this, you know what I'm talking about. I want to get these shorty headers installed in this car. Many moons ago, I saw these at a swap meet for only 50 bucks. They were brand new in the box. They had the gaskets and everything with it. In fact, these have been sitting around for so long, I don't even know what happened to the box. It's just gone. I just have the parts laying around. So right now, I'm going to get this car up in the air, and we're going to start doing some inspections to see what we got to do to complete this job. Okay, so just a word of warning, these aren't your grandfather's or father's headers. You just can't go from the top anymore under the hood and put these in. They're just too complex. They're at a too tight of an area because they're surrounded by the subframe. You just can't get to them easily. So I was looking at the service manual, and that says to not pull this H-pipe. I don't know how you're going to get these out without pulling this H-pipe. It also says to remove the starter and lift the engine up. I'm going to try to do it not lifting the engine up. I'll see if I can reach in there, but I'll have a better feeling once I get the starter out and once I get this H-pipe out. And I'm going to do that right now. Don't forget about removing the O2 sensors from here in the back and then up at the top. Totally forgot about earlier that on these cars this EGR tube's got to come out here. So it's got to be unscrewed from the manifold right there, and then it also has to be unbolted from the top, and then we're just going to push that aside and we'll see what we're going to do about these manifolds. So you can see now a little bit better what we're working with on both sides. I mean, it is really tight, but I am going to just grab a handful of sockets, swivels, extensions, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, anything I can think of to snake in there and try to get all these nuts off these manifolds. So I think I can get them out without lifting the engine up. So I'm going to go ahead and wrestle up all that stuff and start taking these nuts off, see if I can get these out. Okay, so all modern cars nowadays, they all have aluminum cylinder heads. And to fasten the exhaust manifolds to those heads, they use a stud like this, and the nut holds the manifold in place. Well, typically what happens is from over time, when you try to remove this nut, the whole stud comes out. But this is the first time ever with this project, I've had all the nuts came off the studs, and I didn't have any studs come out, which is really rare. So because of that, Ford was actually right in this case. You do have to lift the engine up. Now, if those studs all would have came out, I probably could have got this manifold out. So we're going to have to go to plan B. So yes, unfortunately, we are going to have to lift this engine up. The best thing to do would be a engine lift, which I do have, but a lot of people don't have that in their garages, so I want to kind of replicate what you might have laying around. So I'm actually going to use these jacks that I have that are actually meant to level an RV, and I'm going to go right up here on this timing cover boss and turn the jack head slowly, just enough to lift the engine so I can get these exhaust manifolds out. Now in my younger days I would actually jack up on this balancer, but that actually could damage the bearings, so I've learned better and I got a lot smarter in my older years. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to use a block of wood so I don't damage anything, and we'll get this engine up and we will then get these manifolds out and the new headers in. Well, scratch that previous idea because those jack stands are not working out too well. It's not keeping the engine very stable, and I was worried it was going to slip off. So I had to break out the engine lift, and here I am prepping everything to get the chain on and then starting to lift the engine up. Okay, so why go to these shorty headers and get rid of these old cast iron manifolds? Well, besides getting more horsepower and torque out of the engine, and who doesn't want that, I want to get a little more rumble out of the exhaust. And again, we got a good deal on these headers and might as well go ahead and put them in. But how do they actually work? Well, you can see with this old cast iron manifold here, it's all together in kind of one piece. So the disadvantage of that is when the exhaust valve is going to close, some exhaust gases can still stay in the chamber and go into the cylinder, and that hurts your performance and what's called decreases your volumetric efficiency. So with the header is nice and tuned. It has longer pipes to prevent that from happening. Now these are shorty headers, so if you had long tube headers, that would be more effective. I don't want to put those in the car. I don't want to change the exhaust. I want to leave the exhaust alone. I want it to still look factory. And these, once they're in the engine compartment, you're really not going to notice the headers are in there. Okay, so for whatever reason, I never got these studs. I don't know if they're supposed to come with it or not, but I'm going to get the old ones out of the exhaust manifolds and put them into these headers. Sometimes they're a little difficult to get out, but I'm going to show you a little trick to how you get them out and put them in here. Okay, so here's how I'm going to get these out. You need 2 of the old nuts from the exhaust pipe. You need a ratchet to socket to fit it, and you also need a box end wrench. So I'm going to put on the box end wrench first. That fits the nut. I'm going to put one nut on. I'm actually going to put it upside down. And then I'm going to put the other nut on top of it, and I'm going to tighten together and lock them in place. Like that. You can also use an impact and ratchet this down. So then once I'm going to do that, I should be able to turn the stud and it'll just come right out. Like that. Just like that. And I'm going to take these nuts out, put it in the new exhaust header, and then I'm going to get all the other 3 out and get these ready to go into the car.
So before you put the headers in, don't forget to change over this pipe adapter for the smog tube, because you won't be able to get it in very well once the headers are in. And it's also a good idea to anti-seize it in place, so in case you ever want to get it out again, there won't be any issues. Then repeat the same process for the exhaust pipe studs to the header flanges.
So as we just saw, unfortunately these studs are not going to fit into these manifolds. The thread is too large and these are too small. So I'm going to have to rustle around, go on the internet, and there's probably a stud kit I can buy. I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I'm still going to get these headers in and I can still get the studs up in there. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward, put these headers in the car, and try to see what else we can do to wrap this project up as far as we can until we get our studs. So I looked around, I really couldn't find an exact replacement kit for my exhaust collector studs, so I ended up just getting this generic kit here, and it's the right thread size for what needs to go into those headers. So I'm going to jump under the car, put those in, get my H-pipe back into the car. And it should be all set with this job that we can lower the car down. We're going to fire it up, and then we're going to see what the exhaust tone is, see if it's any different or not. So in previous episodes of Bird's Garage, I've talked about how important it's not to just change your oil to have a long-lasting vehicle. You got to change fluids like the coolant, the brake fluid, anything that's a fluid in your car. It's a good idea to get that out of there at certain maintenance intervals and put new fluid in. And I'm going to talk about 2 more of those right now. And while the car's up in the air, it's a perfect time to jump underneath. And we're going to go ahead and show you the first one. Okay, transmission fluid. Probably one of the most overlooked fluids out there, not changed on a regular basis. Automatic or manual, doesn't matter. You got to change the fluid, get the old stuff out, put the new stuff in. Especially on a manual like this, we're going to do it here on our T3650. It's very easy. All we got to do is just got to take the straight pipe plug out. We can do that with our 3/8 ratchet and let all the fluid drain out and put new in. So before you put these pipe plugs back in, you should put a little something on the threads to help it seal a little bit better. Liquid thread sealer is preferred. I can't find any around here right now. I might have ran out of it. So I'm just going to use some Teflon tape. But you can get in trouble with Teflon tape. There's a right way and a wrong way to put it on. I'm going to show you how to do that.
So a lot of mistakes people make with this tape is when they put it on, they put too much of it over the bottom like this. So if I just wrap it, to show you as an example. So if you were to put that then into the hole, what happens is this tape actually will shear off and then it's loosened whatever you put it in. Now imagine that into an automatic transmission. That being loose, it could go into a valve body. It can actually do some pretty good damage. So then what I like to do is actually just go up like a thread. Just a thread like this. You can see right there I got just like 1 or maybe even 2 threads exposed. And then just wrap it tight. I got a little bit more, little cut off, but you get the idea. So being like that, then you won't get anything into the transmission.
Then we got most of the fluid out of the way. We can put our plug back in, and then we're just going to snug it. I'm not going to make it super tight. So that's a little bit easier part of the job. The more difficult probably part of it is refilling our transmission with fluid. Now, our plug is right here for a fill. It's a little bit difficult to get to. I'm actually doing it now while the exhaust is out. It's even a little bit easier. But to do this, we're going to need a fluid transfer pump. Which I happen to have right here. So what we're going to do then, we're going to take that upper plug out. We're going to use this fluid transfer pump, and we're going to put it in the bottle, put this up in that hole after we take that pipe plug out, and we're just going to keep pumping away. So after putting about 3.5 quarts of Dextron 3 automatic transmission fluid into this hole, I'm going to put the pipe plug back in and snug it down, and we can go on to our next maintenance item. Okay, the next maintenance item we're going to take care of is we're going to change the power steering fluid. Now, dirty power steering fluid is part of the leading causes of early power steering pump failures and also seals in the rack and pinion. So it's a good idea on a continual basis, on a good schedule, go ahead and get this fluid out and put it back in. Now, you just can't drain the reservoir. There's a way that you have to try to do it to get most of the fluid out, and I'm going to show you that right now. So how I'm going to do that then is I'm going to use this fluid extractor tool, and I'm going to put the hose into the reservoir, and what I'm going to do is manually draw the fluid out. Now once I do it initial time, I'm going to start up the vehicle. I'm going to lock the lock 3 times the steering wheel, and that should get a lot of the fluid circulated into the power steering system. And then I'm going to shut the car off, and I'm going to draw the fluid back out, top off the reservoir. I'm going to do that like about 3-4 times. You should get most of the fluid out of the system that way, and then we'll be good to go. We'll have a nice clean power steering system. Okay, so initially I have to pump this up a lot to create a vacuum in the tank, and then putting that into our reservoir, we'll be able to draw our fluid out. Okay, that noise was a good sign. That means we're at the end. So I plug the hose up. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to top it off with some clean transmission fluid. Start the vehicle up, go lock the lock 3 times, drain the fluid back out again, start the process over. Okay, so before I install my water outlet back onto my intake manifold, I want to chase the threads out with a tap or a thread chaser and get it nice and clean so when I put everything back together, I'm not going to have any issues with the assembly and then torquing the bolts back down to spec. But unfortunately though, in this really tight area, I can't get a thread chaser or a tap into this tight window. So right now then I'm going to show you how to make a thread chaser, something that'll fit in this tight little area, and all you need is an old bolt and a die grinder. So if your shop's like mine, it's inevitable. You're going to have a bunch of old bolts laying around. So what I did is I found this bolt that's the same length as the one that I took out of that small area that's in the intake manifold. That really comes close to the water pump that's almost about to crash when you pull it out, but you can still get it out. So before I make the slits with the die grinder, I also need to find a nut that's going to fit on the same thread and install it all the way onto the head. Now what that's going to do is when we're done making our 2 slits into the bolt, what we're going to do then is that's going to help us clean the any burrs out in the threads, and when we're going to back it off. So now I'm going to put it into the vise, and I'm going to make 2 slits, one here and one on the underside, with just a die grinder like this by putting the wheel right onto the perpendicular with the threads. So what I'm doing then is I'm going to simulate the kind of the cuts here that are into this tap. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the slits into the bolt. Kind of like that. I'll flip it around and do the other side. So I'll do it directly opposite. So right now the cut is here, so I'm going to put it right through the top. So now that's done, I want to go ahead and I want to take a file, and I want to put the file edge here in between the threads.
Now what that's going to do then is help break out any huge burrs that are in there or any pieces of metal that still aren't conforming in with the thread. And then once I get done with that, I'm going to back the nut off, and that'll help clean anything else out. I'm going to match everyone up, just go back and forth like this. That's pretty good. I'm going to turn around and then do the other side. So now that I finished cleaning all the threads with the file, what I'm going to do is back the nut off, and hopefully it'll just come out on its own. If it comes out on its own, you know you got everything and everything's nice and clean. So that nut came out really nice. That means we've got all the little burrs out of those areas where we made the slits in. I'm going to go ahead and look at it again by eye. And that looks really good. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it into the hole in the intake manifold. So here's the thread chaser I just made. Now I'm going to put it into the hole, and it should go in nice and easy. There's not too much debris, at least in the beginning part of the hole. Yeah, that's going in pretty good. So I think I bottomed out the best I can. I'm going to back it out. And there was a little dirt in there. I don't know if you can see it on there. There's a little dirt, not too much, but still good insurance. Always tap out your holes before you assemble your bolts and torque them down to spec. Now I'm just going to take a blowgun. I'm going to blow that hole out and be all set. And that's how you make a thread chaser. So as stated earlier, one of the reasons I took out the exhaust manifolds and installed these shorty headers, I was trying to get a little more rumble out of the exhaust. Well, here's a before and after, and you listen and see what you think. So that's going to wrap up another show. Check us out on the web at burdsgarage.net. You'll learn about all the projects we're currently working on, and you can also watch all our full-length shows. So as always, thanks for watching. Good luck with your projects, and remember, it's not a rewarding day unless you get dirty.